303. 31-year-old Jerome Aniska was arrested in Dover, Delaware by local police for pulling a gun on pro-life activists and threatening them outside a Planned Parenthood clinic. 304. A church in Tennessee where Roger Stone is scheduled to speak at was vandalized with vulgar spray paint messages by immature leftist fascists that included "Burn in Hell" and "Fascists Beware." 305. Antifa punks in Portland showed their true cowardly colors when, contrary to their anti-police stance, they began demanding police protection after local patriots fought back and clobbered the young punks in retaliation for the punks crashing a pro-police rally and behaving in their usual childish manner, including throwing their own waste, along with eggs and rocks, at the pro-police side. 306. An attempt by the Antifa punks to use illegal fireworks as weapons against the pro-police patriots also backfired on them as the firework exploded in the punks' faces instead. The pet of a Broken Arrow, Oklahoma woman whose boyfriend is a local police officer was ruthlessly tortured and murdered in what is now being investigated as a hate crime. 307. It has been suspected that the animal killing was inspired by the earlier racism-fueled torture and killing of a raccoon by BLM thugs. Left-wing domestic terrorists set fire to a church with a Black Lives Matter sign out front in Kenosha, Wisconsin. Riots arose in Kenosha, Wisconsin over an officer-involved shooting of a black man wanted for various crimes. Police scanner audio indicates a woman called 911 to report Jacob Blake was at her home and wasn't supposed to be, and had stolen her keys. Responding police were made aware of Blake's arrest warrant for domestic abuse and a felony sex crime. Blake brawled with cops before reaching inside his car and was shot. He survived, but the incident sparked mass BLM-inspired deadly violence in Kenosha in support of the felon. 308. Democrat Governor Tony Evers encouraged violence by publicly condemning the police before the investigation was completed and the facts established. 309. Marxist rioters from Chicago were notified by Twitter. 310. The small-town police department of Kenosha, unprepared and untrained in riot control, was quickly overwhelmed. 311. The courthouse, probation and parole department, car dealers, businesses, and public service vehicles were set on fire. Thugs jumped on police cars, slashed tires, knocked out an officer, and tossed incendiary grenades at the cops. 312. Amid the violence, one rioter accidentally lit herself on fire. 313. BLM leader Shaun King, who is white but claims to be black, applauded the violence and openly called for further mayhem. 314. As reported on August 25, 2020, the thugs beat an elderly store owner to the point of unconsciousness for defending his property. 315. A conservative reporter had a pistol pointed in his face while covering the riot. 316. The Kenosha Police Department, which can only field a maximum of 90 officers on the street per shift, asked Wisconsin Democrat Governor Tony Evers for 750 National Guardsmen. Evers sent only 250. President Trump offered to send the additional 500. Acting for partisan political reasons, Evers rejected the offer. 317. Two white BLM terrorists who attacked Kyle Rittenhouse, a 17-year-old boy guarding private property, were killed while a third rioter, far leftist, People's Revolution Movement member and career criminal Gage Grosskreutz, 318, had part of his arm blown off by rifle fire. One of the deceased punks, Joseph Rosenbaum, was a racist and a pedophile registered as a sex offender in Wisconsin. 319. While the second punk, Anthony Huber, who ineffectually wielded a skateboard as a weapon against Rittenhouse, also had a lengthy criminal record. 320. Democrat squad member Ayanna Pressley stood up for the criminal punks on Twitter and falsely called Rittenhouse a white supremacist, but she was later heavily criticized by Andy Ngo and others for her comments, with some critics even accusing Pressley of defending pedophile Rosenbaum. A Kenosha BLM militant called for retaliation killings against white people. 321. Far-left rioters in Portland, Oregon paid the price of being tear-gassed after lighting a police station on fire. 322. A militant BLM protester in Portland, Oregon called for unborn children to be strangled by their umbilical cords as her comrades applauded her disgusting screed, then openly declared that she was ready and willing to shoot and kill police officers. 323. An Oregon Democrat was violently assaulted by unhinged far-leftist thug Joshua John Thompson for joining Republicans in gathering signatures to recall Governor Kate Brown. 324. Thompson was subsequently arrested for third-degree assault and second-degree disorderly conduct. Militant and mostly white BLM protesters in Washington, D.C. harassed a white couple at a Mexican restaurant for refusing to raise their fists. 325. BLM thugs in Minneapolis verbally attacked reporter Rebecca Brannon, assaulted her, stole her phone, and smashed it in the streets. 326. Seattle BLM terrorists attempted to burn police officers alive in their precincts by using quick-dry concrete to seal the doors before setting the building on fire. 327. However, their extreme lack of discernible skills due to their stupidity led them to use too much water in the concrete mixture to attempt closing the doorway shut, and the officers were able to kick their way open and disperse the murderous thugs. Deranged North Carolina leftist Marquise Domerius Asomani was arrested on multiple counts for firing gunshots into a crowd of Trump supporters in Fort Mill, South Carolina. 328. Not surprisingly, the liberal media covered for Asomani, who is black, by refusing to report on the incident. Rioters in Atlanta attacked local police with Molotov cocktails and set up barricades to prevent emergency response vehicles from passing through. 329. Lionel Timms, a Minneapolis man bailed out by the far-left Minnesota Freedom Fund that was touted by Kamala Harris, was arrested on a felony assault charge for a violent beating that left his victim with a traumatic brain injury and fractured skull. 330. Timms faces 5 years in prison and a fine of up to $10,000 for the vicious assault. Pablo Perez, an illegal alien in Alabama, was arrested and charged with raping an 11-year-old girl. 331. Perez currently remains in custody and faces up to 20 years in prison for the sexual assault. Extreme looting and riots broke out in Minneapolis following the suicide of a murder suspect. 332. A violent thug with acute TDS choked a woman at a Back the Blue rally in Gresham, Oregon. 333. BLM thugs surrounded the historic St. John's Church in Washington, D.C. and called for it to be burned down. 334. Amidst Donald Trump's acceptance speech, far-left mob on the White House lawn staged a mock guillotine executing a doll representing the president. 335. Militant BLM thugs in Washington, D.C. assaulted an elderly man, punching him in the jaw. 336. A woman was also cursed at by the mob while leaving the White House. 337. And hundreds of rioters harassed a Trump supporter. 338. Senator Rand Paul and his wife Kelly were also attacked. 339. A Florida man in the vicinity of Senator Paul has been arrested for assaulting a police officer. 340. In addition, the goons attacked #Walkaway founder Brandon Straka and harassed him with homophobic slurs. 341. BLM terrorist Steve Sinclair stabbed a white man in Aurora, Colorado while screaming, "Black Lives Matter." 342. Sinclair was subsequently arrested and faces hate crime and attempted murder charges for the incident. Racist anti-white Georgia thug Javon Hatchett, who was arrested for aggravated assault and possession of a weapon during the commission of a crime after brutally stabbing an AutoZone employee, said he needed to find a white male to kill. 343. 2 police officers in Brooklyn were assaulted by a mob after writing a parking ticket. 344. A BLM terrorist from Utah at Washington, D.C. called for ripping President Trump from the White House. 345. The Chicago Teachers Union, a group of violent Marxists, tweeted its support of a guillotine threat in front of the home of Jeff Bezos. 346. BLM thugs in Washington, D.C. harassed diners, screaming in their faces using bullhorns. 347. A pro-Trump patriot in Portland, Oregon was shot dead amid clashes between conservative group Patriot Prayer and far-left domestic terrorists. 348. His murder was celebrated by the BLM rioters in the city. 349. The murderer was later shot dead by law enforcement officers in Lacey, Washington. 350. BLM and Antifa rioters in Oakland attacked local police with projectiles and laser pointers while chanting, "Death to America," a chant also used by Islamic terrorists. 351. Far-left thugs on an overpass threw objects at passing vehicles with Trump flags. 352. 29-year-old police officer Tamaris Bohannon, a father of 3, was killed by a gunshot in St. Louis. 353. The killer, identified only as a 43-year-old white male, was later caught and arrested by St. Louis police following a standoff. A black Baltimore thug attacked a white man with a brick because white lives don't matter. 354. September 2020. Biden terrorist Michael Rienoel, right, white shirt, black hat, lies in wait drawing his pistol for Patriot prayer warrior Aaron Danielson. Left, tan shorts, black shirt and hat.